It's half past ridiculous, and we're seeking Essentio Mentium. Welcome back, guys. Sorry about last week. Little bit of technical difficulties. Actually, it was a physical screw up, but we'll not dwell on that. Yeah, I had a good conversation last week. We did put up a recording of it, so it is there for the archives, but apparently didn't get out on the live stream, which is probably annoying to a lot of people. So we're going to fix that this week and make sure that we're streaming and recording and everything's working, which it is, I think. So, hey, Carl, how you doing this morning?
I'm wonderful, thanks, John. I had a really, really good week and looking forward to another good show. Yeah, bit of a screw up last week. You might want to turn that studio effect down a touch. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to this. It's one of those weekends, I think, that we're trying to figure where we can go because we've covered a good number of subjects. I think we've assisted a lot of people, but now it's action time, I think. So
yeah,
is it time for us to discuss what to do?
Well, a little more detail for sure. One of the things that's coming up a lot in a lot of discussions these days is personal responsibility, and that extends a lot farther than a lot of people think. It's not just how you act or react; it's also how you view the situation, how you view yourself. I mean, it encompasses a lot of things. Now, you ask a lot of people, are you a responsible person? Yes, I am. And, I pay my taxes. I do this, I do that. I follow the rules, drive the speed limit. But that brings up the question, well, have you asked, what are the taxes? Why are you paying taxes? Are you responsible for knowing what that specifically is? And most people will tell you no, they have no idea. They think the taxes go to pay for the schools and the roads, and they don't realize the school is paid by alcohol tax and the roads are paid by the gas tax. The income tax doesn't pay for anything. It goes to the Vatican. I mean, pretty much all of it. It's a complete scam. Most people don't even realize that. So does personal responsibility extend to knowing what you're supporting, knowing the details of what you're supporting, knowing where your money's going, knowing the ethics of the businesses that you support? Does that play into it? Does your personal views play into this as well? And this is something that came up on a discussion a couple of days ago, that yes, your personal views do play into this. And one of the big ones that's coming up and that pretty much everybody needs to look at, I'm not saying everybody's in this boat, but everybody does need to look at this, is, are they in a victim mentality? Now, what I mean by that is, do you blame others for the crap in your life? Do you, when something goes wrong, do you blame the government? Do you blame the police? Do you blame whatever? Is it external? Are you constantly looking for external reasons or scapegoats for the things that go wrong? Now, specifically, what they were discussing in this aspect was the control system, which we do focus on that quite a bit. And from one point of view, yes, certainly the boneheads who run the control system are culpable. They do carry some blame themselves, but each one of us, each individual, also carries some blame in this as well. And a lot of people don't realize this. We allowed it to happen. And by apathy, by not questioning, by being too busy, there's hundreds and hundreds of reasons for it, all of which are correctable, we allowed these things to occur. So we do need to take at least some responsibility for the state of the world, where we're at, our social situations, our political situations, our financial situations. And this is what they were discussing in this one call is when you when you embark on this learning journey, and what we're talking about with the legal system and learning how to deal with the system, it's the same thing, because you are responsible to educate yourself. We've got it in the promotional videos that were made for the show. Nobody's going to do this for you. This came up. There was a fella who came on the chat and messaged me directly, and he says, "Well, who can I listen to learn this stuff?" And basically, my response was, if you're looking for a guru, you're not ready, because you're not going to find this. Somebody is not going to be able to teach you this stuff. You have to do it yourself. This is part of the personal responsibility that we're speaking of, is take responsibility for your own education, because if somebody else is teaching you it, you're going to learn what they want you to learn, and maybe a little bit more, because you'll figure things out yourself. But when you go and do your own research, this came up when I was teaching with the World Freeman Society. I realized this very, very early. I can't tell them what to look for. I can only tell them where to look. And in doing that, they're not only going to find the subject matter that they're asking about, but they're also going to find side roads, rabbit holes, all kinds of other things that will wind up being pertinent to them over time. And that's the best way to learn, is to, as somebody, where can I find the information? Well, go look here, start here. And a couple of people have asked me about that on this show. And I basically, where's your passion? What aspect of this drives you? Well, how can I learn law? Well, that's like, how can I learn cosmology? It's a massive, huge subject. What aspect of that are you interested in? Are you interested in civil, how to make your city go away so it's not bugging you anymore? Is it dealing with the schools? Is it dealing with taxes? Pick a subject, pick a limited subject within that you are passionate about, something that drives you, something that will grab onto you and not let go, and run down that rabbit hole. I will guarantee you, within a couple of weeks of doing this, if it's diligent work, you will be all over the map in that time. And you will have a much broader, much more complete education doing it that way than if I was to just sit down and say, here, read this book. Because you're only going to get what I want you to hear.
Yeah, I think, John, as well, what typically happens, or what has happened to most of us, the disinfo that's out there and the misinformation and the sidetracks that are purposely created, we've kind of gone down a lot of them, and we've made the mistake of concentrating on things that maybe we shouldn't. I think the information now is so condensed and so concise with many of the people that are revealing it, that it doesn't necessarily matter which source you're getting this information from. You typically find that it matches. You and I spoke about it on the pre-show, just about the way things are coming together, the way people are coming together, and we're all talking about the same thing. And the focus of the information is the true and correct information. The disinfo and the bullshit and all that other stuff that kind of distracts you and sends you in places you shouldn't really be going is being removed. And the personal responsibility aspect of things, as you pointed out too, is a bigger subject than most people think. and paying your taxes. The typical system, societal model of responsibility is not the responsibility that we're really talking about. Because that responsibility that they teach you is how to guilt you into doing what they want you to do for society or for their sake. And that's not personal responsibility. That's not knowing who you are, how you should be living in society, and how you should be interacting with other people. That is just simply a guilt factor that makes you perform in a particular way for the benefit of the system. And what we are trying to teach really is the true self-responsibility, losing the fear, and looking not just for yourself, but looking out for your community and behaving in a manner that is to the benefit of all, for their highest good, and also to interact with people with positive emotions, with positive actions. Because when you change the way you live, the way that you interact with people, and you project positive emotions, love, all of these things, and the different levels of love. A conversation I had several months ago in another chat room was just talking about what love actually is. I don't think people realize or comprehend what love really is. I think the human love, the movie fictionalized love that we force-fed daily, isn't really what love is. It's something much, much more than that. And if we can make the change in ourselves to behave using the true knowledge of what love is, then this planet will change within a week. So I think that's where we have to go. We have to go that way. We have to teach people what this actually is. And when we hear this, we have to forgive. We have to let things go. Yes, there's a certain point where you should do that, because there's high levels, but it's not that you don't hold people accountable, and turning the other cheek isn't something that I tend to do. If somebody smacks me in the cheek, they get one back. It's simple as that. That's my reaction. But that's a defensive reaction. I defend myself and I defend who I love. And if anybody attacks me in any form, then I defend myself. And we have to get into our own mindsets that this love and light, yes, it's a good thing, but that doesn't mean to say that you can't protect yourself, that you shouldn't protect yourself. If somebody attacks you, you shouldn't sit there and take it. And what we've been doing collectively is taking it. So now it's a time to stand up.
Yeah, this brings to mind a parable that I heard years and years and years ago. I don't remember the exact story, so I'll just kind of make another one up that's the same thing. This fellow walks into a deli, and he's basically the only person in there other than the people that work there. And the girl behind the counter is like really distracted. She's not, she's not on the phone, but she's not there. And he tries to get her attention, and she's kind of, like not really paying attention very much. And this guy gets really upset. Now, where is the fault? Like if we're going to look at this, the personal responsibility thing, we need to look at where is the fault? Not necessarily holding to the fault, but where is the error in the interaction to begin with? In this instance, It just so happens that this girl just got off the phone and she was just told her father died. But the guy that walked into the deli, he got all upset and starts yelling at her and storms out. Now, is it her fault that she's distracted because she's now really emotionally distraught because her father died? Or is it the fault of the guy because he didn't just step back, go, okay, well, she's distracted. Why? What's going on? Are you okay? You know, he was being selfish and just started screaming and yelling. I'm a customer. I expect to be served. You know, screw you. I'm out of here. This is the kind of responsibility that I was talking about, is how you react to a situation. And what Carl said, you know, you get attacked. Yes, you can defend yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But if it's simply, you know, like a verbal attack, some guy's just getting in your face and you punch him in the nose, yeah, that's a little bit extreme as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you need to look at why he's doing this. Perhaps this guy is mentally ill. Perhaps he just doesn't know what he's doing. He could be drunk out of his face and all he needs is a good sleep, which sometimes a punch in the head, that's a good sleep. But, you know, rather than assume, because you remember, we've been talking over and over and over, do not work on assumptions, ever. Rather than assume this guy is simply an asshole, why not give him the benefit of the doubt right off the bat and say, look, he's got a problem. You know, something is not right here. And does it warrant a physical response to this problem? You know, is he actually, you know, consciously, purposefully, willingly engaging in this action, or is there something else there? And this applies to dealing with the police, dealing with the politicians, dealing with the system in general. Now, from a larger perspective, the system in general, this horrible control system, slavery system, however you want to term it, is actually a good thing. If we didn't have it in the way that we have it now, we wouldn't know the difference. We wouldn't know what we prefer. If all you eat is spaghetti every single day, all day long, every day of your life, you're not going to know what a blueberry muffin is like. You're not going to know that you like it. You're not going to know that you don't like cod liver oil. Everybody goes through this. I mean, to some extent, everybody goes through this. They experiment and they find out what they don't like. And then they shy away from it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's actually a good thing to do. In the political system, we needed to get to a point where we say, no, we don't want that. How are we going to know what we don't want if we don't experience it? So I don't blame the people that are doing this to us, because they're doing us a service in a larger perspective. They're actually helping us realize where we want to be, what kind of people we want to be, how we want to interact with one another, how we want to deal with one another. We wouldn't have learned this otherwise. And so from that perspective, I can't say that I'm happy that it happened, because that would not be absolutely accurate, but I appreciate that it's there. And I'm hoping more people can see this. Sherry, yes, she says we need the contrast. And Mia says it's always a choice, what we perceive. You know, the concept of walk a day in my shoes, of course. If you can't put yourself in someone else's position, if you can't at least imagine what they might be going through, you know, you could have 6 or 7, 8, 24 scenarios. But we need to have the responsibility to ourselves to step back from any situation, even just slightly, and look at it from a larger perspective. You know, is there something else here other than what's on the surface? This is a big part of that, the personal responsibility. We need to have that in ourselves. We need to express it. We need to display it or none of the stuff we're talking about is going to work. And this came up with the UCC filings, the One People Public Trust filings, and the information that's coming out now about the collateral accounts or the Treasury Direct accounts. This isn't about money, guys, or at least that isn't, because those accounts, there's no money in the account. The account is zero. It always stays zero. When it goes negative, it goes back to zero. There's no, there is the, I don't want to use the word illusion, but there's the perception of quintillions, if not if not septillions of dollars in these accounts. But in reality, the account just says zero, and it always stays zero. It's just a settlement account. That's all it is. When a bill comes in, it's just settled and then zeroed out. So it's not about getting rich. Not only that, the freedom that is allotted, or that is returned, I should say, because of these filings. If you look through the filings, read through them, you'll find out that all of your identification, your straw man, your the all caps name, everything that has been previously applied to you, that through the World Freedmen Society, we discovered that they do exist, and you don't really want to play with it unless you use it as a raincoat. It's a tool, but all of these things are now yours. They belong to you. The ownership of these things is now in your hands, and you can use it any way you want. The statutory legal system, the admiralty law system, the commercial law system has been foreclosed. It doesn't exist anymore. This doesn't mean you can go and do whatever you bloody well please. You have to take into consideration your actions and how they affect the people around you. You have to be personally responsible for your actions. And very shortly, you will be. If you screw up, if you screw up and you do something and cause harm, loss, or damage to someone else, you will answer for it. It won't be very long before that is back well known again, just like it was in the the 30s, where you just don't hurt people. And really, what would be the point? There was a time when people would say that would be necessary, that it's look out for number one. If I don't get it for myself, nobody's going to give it to me. But that's changing. That's changing really fast. And the small communities that Carl and I are involved with, the RT community, the Lisa's community, the one surrounding Bob Wright and Heather, the community that Brian Kelly's in where is he? He's Maui? No, not Hawaii.
Yeah, it's Hawaii, isn't it?
No. He's in Bali. Sorry.
Okay.
Now, if you really look at these communities, there's some few things wrong with all of them, because we're not perfect and we're trying as best we can. But the core essence of those communities is support. If somebody has a problem, they can bring it out. They're not going to be ridiculed. People are going to try to help. So we know it's changing. You don't have to look out for number one anymore. We are rapidly getting to the point where you look out for your neighbors. And everybody does that, we all win. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, that was the nature of the capitalist system. I've always said that the isms, I felt anyway, that the isms, the capitalisms, the communisms, socialism, all of these were simply just experiments to find out what was going to be the best way of controlling the slaves. Mm-hmm. What's the best thing to do? Give a slave some freedom and they'll work hard for you. Treat a slave as a slave and you're forever fighting to control them. Capitalism, as far as I was concerned, just seemed to be the best model for them to use, where the livestock, as a descriptive, would work hard because they were given the illusion that they could succeed. And to some extent, maybe they could monetarily, but everything else went to hell in the handbasket because who we were as human beings, as people, was also knocked out of us. And the dog-eat-dog mentality has now brought us to this state in society where, you know, America specifically and large parts of the Western world is not a very nice place to live. It's dangerous. You know, in some cities, it's extremely dangerous because there are large sections of population now that it doesn't matter what they do, they cannot attain those higher levels. So what's left for them but crime and everything else? So part of what's going to happen is the change of society. If this money is released, this energy is released, we will be able to exist without thoughts of crime. Why would you? If you can get what you need.
Well, there is that, yes, but there's also in that specific example, particularly the areas of these cities, which is, you know, you just don't go into. It's a huge victim mentality, and these people are all pissed off. They're all angry. They're militant because they didn't get from. And rather than them just banding together going, look, we don't need them, we're going to do it ourselves, taking responsibility for their problems, their issues, their lack, and correcting it. I mean, people who are in poverty, I don't want to disparage them. I'm there myself. But I also know I'm here by choice. And some of these people don't believe they're there by choice, but they are. Everybody, well, with the exception of a few, a very small few, they can walk out of it. They can get themselves out of it if they have the community, the support from the community, and the willingness to do what's necessary to do this, to take responsibility for their situation and to move forward from it. I mean, like we said, this personal responsibility concept goes very, 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 very deep. And yeah, I live on virtually nothing. I live on the goodwill of my neighbors and the people that I serve on the internet. I don't have lots of anything, and I have what I need to do what I'm here to do, and that is sufficient for me. I don't need a boat. I would like to have a motorcycle, but I'm thinking to myself, well, why? What would be the point? What would I use it for? I don't go anywhere. I don't travel. So I don't need transportation. I'd like to have a second drone. What am I going to use it for? I don't fly the first one. There's lots of things that I would like to have, but when I really look at it from a responsible standpoint, what's the point? Why do I do this? And some of the stuff that's around me is just toys. It's just here to experiments, things to kill some time when I've got time to kill. And, because I have interests in 3D printing, I have interest in lasers, certain scientific things, and I have little bits and pieces of that sitting around here, which I've collected over the years, which doesn't really matter. But I don't need to go and get a whole bunch of junk. I mean, lots of people out there, I keep hearing it more and more as time goes by, people downsizing, and they're so glad they got rid of their garbage. I can't believe I had a garage full of stuff that I never looked at for 35 years, and it's so nice that it's gone. Over and over, I'm hearing this. And, they are...
done that.
Exactly. They are learning one aspect of this personal responsibility, because you are responsible for the junk you collect, and it does get out of hand. I've been there. Carl, you've been there. Everybody's been there, and a lot of us are still there. Well, it's
attachments to stuff that we ended up purchasing, and some of it might be sentimental because it was given to you as presents. So there's a an emotional attachment to many of these things. And in fact, that's what most of it is. These hoarders that you hear about, most of the stuff they have, it's useless, but it has an emotional attachment. There's an emotion that relates to almost everything that they have. And if you watch any of these TV programs that talk about hoarders and how they try and remove the stuff that they have, it's like ripping parts of their heart out every time they try and move something. And that's, I think, where we have to grow as a people as well, because we have to lose the attachments to personal items, to the outcome of events, all sorts of things. We just exist in a state of, giving love and all of the positive emotions that you could possibly come up with. And if each and every one of us does that, then each and every one of us is going to receive love and all of the other positive emotions related to it. So anything that's negative that gets created as a result of, the human programming that we all have to live with, kind of disappears. And that's where I'm at, that losing the fear, it comes from losing the connectiveness or the it comes from losing access to these programs, to cutting off the access to these programs that control our lives and control what it is that we're doing in life. And the more I'm doing this, the more I realize that the positive aspects of our human emotional construct defines our lives, defines how we live our lives, defines what comes to us. Because the law of attraction, for instance, I'm using that term loosely, but does appear to have an effect that you give out positivity, you manifest the love and the generosity and the gratitude within your life, then you tend to receive that back. If you live in a depressed state and you live with negativity around you and attraction to things that realistically you shouldn't be attracted to, then you will continue to attract that negativity and all of the other negative aspects of life. And you will not progress. You will not get out of that rut. It's only when you are able to give and give freely, lose the attraction to, or the attachment to things and expectations in your life, expectations of a job, expectations of a relationship. If you just put into this stuff and stop expecting things back, your life will progress in a vastly different way than you could ever imagine. Because expectation is, you're always going to be disappointed, put it that way, because your expectations are never going to be what the actual reality of any event or any job or any relationship. You set yourself up for failure. So stop expecting things. Stop having an attraction to items that mean nothing.
Well, anybody who's...
It's not emotion.
Yeah. Anybody...
Sorry, I'm just going to say it's not the emotion to the object that's important. It's the emotion, the emotional attachment to the person. And are they still in your life? If they're still in your life, then give that emotional attachment to the person, not to the object that they gave you or whatever it is that you're emotionally attached to as a thing. If they're not in your life anymore, then keep that memory within you, but don't attach that emotional memory to another object, because it doesn't serve you. It just becomes rubbish and garbage that you have to throw out at some point in the past, because it's useless to have it. Again, it's the change in the thinking. It's the changing in how we perceive our existence and our emotional attachments to other people, and how we show that to other people without the expectations, and the consequences of those attachments and those expectations becoming negative, because it never plays out the way we want it to or expect it to in our mind's eye. And when that happens, we're disappointed. Right away, you're in the negative. So stop doing that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And anybody who's played with the energetics, who has played with manifestation, they learned really, really, really fast that yes, you will get what you manifest, but it will always come out of left field. It will always come from a source that you never expected. And rather than go, well, I got my nice car, but I didn't get it the way I wanted. Oh, woe was me. Just be glad you got the nice car. Be glad you got that $100 that you needed. It doesn't matter where it comes from. It doesn't matter, because it's all the same source. It's all the same thing. There is only one consciousness, and we are all just fractals of that one consciousness. And I mean, you can go on down hundreds of rabbit holes with this. But there's, we exist in one universe. It's all one thing. We are one people. We are all the same species. I mean, you can look at the connections rather than the divisions and see that the connections are what makes everything wonderful. That's what makes this all possible. It's the connections that will get us out of this system as well, because rather than continuing with the divide and conquer scenario that we've been living under for however many long years it's been, depending upon whether you actually believe history, I can only go back 53 years. And anything before that is a story. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's fiction. I mean, there's some corroboration with it, but chances are it's not as accurate as it should be. So, living in the moment, living for the other, so that what you do to benefit not just yourself, but everybody else. That's not to say that, when you're tired or you're dirty, go have a shower. You can do things for yourself. And I learned that when I was doing first aid is it doesn't matter what the situation is. It doesn't matter how much they're bleeding. If I'm going to get injured going to help them, I'm not to go help them. I have to take care of myself first, because if I get injured, then there's nobody going to help anybody, because I'm the first aid guy and I'm the one that's there to help. So, one of
the first mottos of the first response.
That's right. If you can't do it safely, you don't do it at all, because there's no, otherwise. Well, there was a prime example in Vancouver. When was that? It was about 6 years ago. There were some people working on a barge, and they're down inside the barge welding. And the guy didn't respond to the check-in. So his supervisor went down to get him. And then his supervisor didn't respond to the check-in. So the first aid guy went, okay, there's a problem. And he went down there, and he didn't respond to the check-in. And all of a sudden, they got the professional first responders came in, and they opened the thing up and go, we're not going in there. There's no atmosphere there. There's no way we can survive. We'll be dead in minutes. And, people do this. Wanting to help somebody, it's awesome. That's why I became, level 2 IFA first aid. But I also had to make the limit of, if it's ridiculously dangerous to go and pull this guy out of the furnace, there's nothing I can do. I can't go pull him out of the furnace. I have to turn the furnace off, try to figure out some way that either cool it off or make sure that I'm safe to go and do this. So, you know, there is elements where you need to look at yourself first, but if in that respect, you take care of yourself so you can take care of your neighbors, right? I mean, there's what's wrong with that? I don't see anybody that could fault anyone with that. But if you're still stuck
that still goes with the golden rules as well, John. I mean,
well, of course.
Yeah, I mean, do no harm to yourself is really the main thing.
I mean,
go ahead.
I lost my thought. That's okay.
I'm sorry.
No worries. It must not have been very good. I'm starting to struggle here a little bit with this anyway, so I'm kind of okay to move on.
No. Well, the personal responsibility aspect. Yeah, I mean, we're getting into a little bit of the. I don't want to say woo-woo kind of stuff, but
well, philosophical for sure.
Philosophical, yeah. I mean, it's a way of thinking, and we over the weeks that we've done this show, we seem to have found that we definitely think in very, very similar lines, and we've had similar. Well, actually, we're similar ages too, but we've had a similar life path in many respects. But we do think in the same way, and I think that the conclusions that we've drawn and we've come to over the years of doing study on this has brought us to a very good position in relation to being able to pass that information to our listeners now and anybody who listens to the show in the future.
To be fair, for everybody out there, Carl and I did have interactions, I don't know, what was that, 15 years ago?
Well, 10, probably 10.
Okay, 10
and something for me.
Yeah, 10, 12 years ago. But it was not like direct, constant contact interaction. We didn't go see each other. We weren't friends. Other than I was running a society that he was part of, and we interacted in that fashion. And it wasn't up until, 3-4 months ago that we actually began to talk.
Yeah.
So although we've been down similar paths, we weren't interacting during that time. We came to these conclusions on our own, independently. And I mean, yes, I probably influenced Carl a little bit back then, and he's probably influenced me a little bit back then. Frankly, I don't remember it because I was dealing with 600-700 members all at once. So I had lots of people talking to me all the time, and picking one out of the crowd, I can't just pick one out of the crowd. I mean, there's a couple of the members who do stand out because they did amazing things, but for the most part, it's all a blur. But just so that the listeners are aware, Carl and I didn't spend the last 10 years working on this together. It was completely independent, but we still came to the same conclusions.
Yeah.
You know, his research
that I think is mighty powerful because, it's independent confirmation, I believe. And it's not just us. There are many others out there that are coming to the same conclusions. So the fact that that's happening, and we're coming together now, at this particular moment in time, I think it's important, and that's why we chose to do this. We started talking only 3 months ago, and very quickly decided that this show was what we wanted to do because we wanted to invest in you guys to give you as quickly and as openly and as honestly as we could our perspective on what society actually is and how best to move forward. Because whether you like it or not, what is in place right now is, and in some cases has already collapsed. So we have to rebuild something, and we have to comprehend, firstly, that there was actually anything wrong. Most people, well, I won't say most, but there is a group out there, let's say, that thinks there's nothing wrong. This society is working perfectly well. Well, for them, maybe, but for the rest of humanity, it sure as hell isn't.
Well,
firstly, we have to comprehend that there is something wrong before we can then realize what there is that needs fixing. Yeah?
Most definitely. The thing, the real thing about this is it is going to happen. It's going to crash and burn. It has to. And mathematically, it's inevitable. What's going to happen then? We're going to have, lots of people, it's going to be chaos. There's going to be death in the streets and people burn cars and it's just going to be horrible, 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 which is, that's a distinct possibility. But if we have one person in each community, one person with a voice, one person with a perspective that can go, hold on, wait a minute, we don't have to do that. Let's try this and offer up a new perspective that these people haven't been exposed to. They're probably going to be more inclined to listen, at least most of them anyway, because they don't know where to go. I was in the same position that I'm going to bring up, and so I can't disparage anybody for being there. I feel sorry for them, actually, that they haven't been taught how to learn. And, I know a lot of people are going to go, you don't know what you're talking about. It's not me. That's not me. But it is you. We all have been there. We all are there. I have issues learning things too, because we haven't been taught how. Now, I think I had a little bit of a leg up when I was very, very young, because my father wouldn't teach me things. He would show me where to go get the information. So I learned to do my own research early. And although it helped, it wasn't sufficient. It wasn't complete, because he didn't understand it completely himself. There's a lot of people out there who forgot, they don't know what a library is. They don't know what it's for. They, if it's not on the internet, it doesn't exist. And what happens when the internet goes down? What happens when, if there is a global EMP and all the electronics go out, how are these people going to get by, right? They're going to have to learn. They're going to have to learn really fast, because you can only go so long without before it starts to cause you serious issues. Where was I going to go with this? Oh, I'm having such a hard time thinking these days. Is anybody else, folks in the audience, is anybody else like this? Just, you get a thought in your head and you get halfway through it and it's just gone over and over and over again, but it's only recent. I'm like that. Danny's like that. Lisa's like that. All of the people that I interact with daily are there to some extent. We're just not all here.
Yeah. No, well, I can agree with you. And actually, it's funny, you mentioned how you became the researcher, let's say, how you were taught, if you like, to learn. When I went through the same process.
Yeah, when my father did that to me, I thought he was the biggest asshole on the planet. Because I asked him, I wanted to learn about airplanes. I was like 5 years old, maybe 6, grade 1 or grade 2. I started school at 5 years old, but that's because my birthday's in an odd time. And I was curious about airplanes. I wanted to learn what an airplane is, how it works, and he goes, well, it's called aeronautics. Go to the library. And that's it. That's all he didn't go through and explain it. He didn't draw any pictures. He didn't interact with me in any way, shape, or form concerning this. And he just said, it's called aeronautics. Go look it up. So I did. I built my first airplane when I was 7. And yes, it was a model airplane, and it flew. But that lesson looking back on it from a perspective, 15 years beyond where he was when he gave it to me, it served me really well. It taught me how to go get if I had a question, I don't have to ask someone for the answer. I can go get the answer myself. And there's a huge volume of the population who don't know how to do that. And that's going to be a problem over the next 5 years, 10 years, where they're going to wind up with an issue, and they even though the solution is staring them in the face, it's right there in front of them, they're not going to see it because they don't know how to look for it.
Yeah, that's one of the discussions I've been having too with some of my some friends in regard to how the system right now, the nanny state, has created this situation. Because like you, my dad did exactly the same thing. So I learned how to find stuff out for myself.
Well, if you don't want your kids
reading some serious books at eight years old,
yeah,
stuff that 8-year-olds shouldn't be reading.
If you don't want your kids to ever leave home, don't teach them how to cook, don't teach them how to do laundry, and don't teach them how to drive. Right?
Yeah. Well, the way that the kids have been taught these days, part of the problem is that they feel entitled. But the other aspect is that they just don't know how to do things. Everything is done for them. And I hate to say it, my sister is a prime example of this. I mean, she has a 19-year-old that's just about to go to university and a 23-year-old. They were brought up with a nanny, and my sister has basically done everything that they should have been doing for themselves. So right now, they really don't know how to live. They don't know how to survive. And she's still doing stuff for them, to the extent that the eldest one, the 23-year-old, he supposedly has a job in the city, which is a 30-minute drive from where they live. And she is the one that's doing all the running around trying to find somewhere for him to stay in the city so that he can go and work.
Yep.
Why isn't he doing it? He's 23 years old, for God's sake. I was 20 when I left home. I ended up with a house. I was working. I joined the police at that time. I adopted 2 children. I was an adult at 20 years old, and I knew what I needed to do. The 20-year-olds of these days, they have no concept, they have no clue, and that's part of the change that we have to, we have to spread throughout society. We cannot exist this way. We cannot exist with other people doing things for us. We have to be able to work out how to do things for ourselves. And yeah, if they're seriously difficult, then get a specialist to come in. But basic stuff, like driving, knowing how to go and actually do some research yourself so that you can find a place to live instead of having your mom do it for you. Where is society going to go if that is allowed to continue?
Well, I mean, this kind of brings us back to what we were discussing earlier. And I have a friend living in Montreal right now, and love her to pieces. Hi, Corinne, if you hear this. And she has an issue with millennials. I mean, granted, I've discussed this with her at length, and she has a point. But is it their fault? Is it not because of the distractions, because of the toys, because of the mind-numbing cell phones, the inadequate schooling? I mean, there's a lot of things you can blame for their condition, but you also have to look at it. They need to realize, well, the first thing with personal responsibility is realizing that you screwed up. I mean, that's the very first thing you got to accept, is that you're not doing it right. Regardless of why, it doesn't matter why. Why is irrelevant at that point. As soon as you realize you're not doing it right, then it moves to the responsibility phase of let's learn to do it right. And a lot of the kids, a lot of the millennials, some of these kids are smart as a whip. Some of these kids get it. A lot of them, they're just, you even bring it up and you get that fluoride stare and they kind of laugh at you and walk away. They'll get it. They'll learn, or they're going to starve. They're going to have something will happen that's going to make them wake up and make them realize, wait a minute, I don't know nearly as much as I need to. And I'm not taking the responsibility that I need to. I'm not allowing myself to be the best I can be, or even a 10% of the best I can be in some cases. I don't blame the kids for it. Yes, it's difficult to deal with. Sometimes I have to deal with the millennials and they're just lost, like completely lost. They don't even know the questions to ask. I mean, they're so lacking in the ability to work through a problem. Even if you don't get to a solution, at least you can see the elements of the problem. And then from that, you can start asking the questions which are going to solve your problem. They can't get there. They don't even know the questions to ask. And they ask completely irrelevant questions which don't matter to the situation. And as soon as they get the answer for it, they realize, well, that was a dumb question. Why did I even ask that? That's part of the awakening process. We need to step back, and instead of disparaging these people constantly, which a lot of us do, look at it, go look. They just don't know, right? What was that one poem they beat into my head when I was 8 years old? He who knows and knows not that he knows is, I can't remember it all. Somebody out there knows that. I'm sure they know the poem that I'm talking about. There's 4 elements to it. And if you break it down, it makes a lot of sense. One of them is, he who knows not and knows not that he knows not is asleep. Wake him. And that's exactly what I'm talking about here, is there's a lot of people who just don't know what they don't know because they never asked the questions. They never took the responsibility of their own education to go, I'm curious about this, I want to learn it. The people...
Well, I think part of that it was put on us, if you like, as well, as a model of education of the direction of the future society. And I think that's where we find ourselves now, because we were put through similar... we didn't have quite so many distractions in our youth because there really wasn't that much, a bit of skateboarding and things like that. But we didn't have all the distractions that we have now, or the kids have now.
Oh no! When I was a preteen, I had to go make my own fun. I lived 10 miles out of town, and if I wanted to do something, I had to go and figure out what I'm going to do. I didn't have a choice. I didn't have friends. I had 4 sisters, and they ignored me most of the time. So I was on my own, and I had to go and make my own distractions.
Me too.
Oh, I had a thought again.
I went out at 9 o'clock in the morning, 7 at night when it started to get dark, and
I walked 4 miles to school barefoot in the snow, and yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't trade my childhood for anything. It made me who I am, and I like who I am. I'm not perfect. I've got a long way to go, but I think I'm on the right track. And so far, very few people have come up to me and said, look, you're really screwing up. You got to do this different. More than that, most people come up and ask for advice. So I'm the feedback I'm getting is that, yeah, I'm doing this right, or at least I'm righter than some. So, no, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change any of it. Now, I hope that everyone winds up with that perspective where they can look back on their life and go, I don't care how shitty it was. It made me who I am. I love it. I'm happy about it. because it does. It's your experience is unique. You're the only one that's ever going to have it, and it's never going to happen again. And you going through it because you can. Hopefully, with what they're saying with the spiritual stuff winds up is that at the end of all of this, we all get together and swap stories and become amazingly well-rounded people because we just know everything what everybody else knows. That would be cool.
Yeah, I think I agree with you entirely. My life has been varied and great in parts and challenging in others. And as some people from the chat group who have listened to the One People Roundtable shows when Danny was doing those with Lisa will probably remember that I'd reached a point, I think, in my life where I was lost. I didn't know, I didn't have my joy. I didn't have a direction in my life. I was just sitting in the waiting room, as Lisa would say.
It was all screwed up. Nothing made sense.
Yeah. I mean, all the things that you can say and didn't seem right. I have to say that since January of this year, I made some changes because I had been actively, as you had also been actively getting involved in this awakening process, this informational process, this knowledge gathering, this engaging of the system in an effort to make a change for the betterment of everybody else. And unfortunately, there were members of my family that it scared. It didn't scare me. I've not been fearful of things for quite some time. But it scared them. So I actually backed away. And I think lots and lots of people out there have or are in the same boat. There are things that you have a drive to do. And it's an external source. It's a drive, divine. You pick a word, pick the source. But there is something that I think many of us are now. That's why we're in the UU room. That's why we're in this chat group. That we have reached the place where we have found our soul family who agree mostly, for the most part, in what we think and feel.
Yeah, and we're not talking we're not talking about skydiving or human cannonballs.
No, no, positive things. But of course, I had been in touch with Danny all the time. I'd never kind of left the scene. I just wasn't actively involved for a couple of years. And it was breaking me down. The drive to do something and the inactivity created a problem in my life. And January, I actively sought Danny again. Well, I'd never really been out of touch, but I said, I'm not on Facebook. I don't really like Facebook. I have the account, never damn well use it, but I want to be in the UU room. Can you please add me? And the rest is history, because I'm back again with the people who think the way I do and want to make a change. I have some extra tools and some extra knowledge. John, you have a whole hell of a lot more too. And there are other people out there in this very room have all sorts of tools that we can come together and move forward. But the fact that I am now actively participating in this and I am making progress, putting this show together with you, John, and getting the information out there has been a complete eye-opener for me and has created a change in me in the direction of my life that I never expected 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And
most
lots
definitely.
of other things have actually opened up in my life as well, so much so that I found my joy. And I'm grabbing on with both hands, and I am moving forward. And I put a post in the UU room the other day. You know, I feel love. I am love. I am strong. You know, my sun is ablaze, and any negativity that gets in my way, well, the only reward for anybody that wants to be negative in my path will be oblivion, in essence, is what I wrote. And that's what I feel. And we all have to come together with that kind of an attitude to lose the fear, gain the knowledge, gain the power, and move forward together. We can't do it as individuals. I've tried, you've tried, and it's impossible. Well, it's not impossible, but it's bloody hard. So we come together with the mindset and the emotional status, the higher being, if you like, everything else, the knowledge, all comes together. We come together as a society, as a group, create our own society, and we have to spread that, but we have to move forward with it. And we do it with responsibility. We do it with love. We do it with a complete change in mindset, so that the way the system currently exists will not exist in the future, because it has to be changed, and it has to be changed for the better. And I just hope other people think the same way as I do. I mean,
yeah. Another.
I would like to bring people in and say, anybody in the room. I mean, if you would agree or if you've got something else to say, John, but I'd like some feedback. You know, is this the way that we should go? Is this just my thinking? Am I wrong? Am I right? Please, go ahead.
Yeah. Come on in if you want to come in. Please be, courteous, and if there's 3 mics open all at once, we'll have to put them on a queue. We don't have a hands up thing on this platform, so it's a little difficult to do. But yes, we would definitely like to hear your perspectives on this, because otherwise it's just a Carl and John show, and this is for you guys. This is for the audience, and without the audience participation, we're just talking out our butts, really.
Well, we seem to do so well, but yeah, please.
Yeah. I want to bring up, while we're waiting for people to decide to participate, I'd like to bring up another point or another perspective that people can look at as far as the personal responsibility goes. And that's comments that I've heard over the last 2, maybe 3 weeks. I've heard them a number of times before, but they're becoming more prevalent over the last couple of weeks. And that is, when I get access to these funds, I'm going to make a help center where people can come and eat and get clothing and, help them out, pay their rent, all of this sort of stuff. And when I heard this, my skin started to crawl, because although that is an admirable thing, it's perpetuating the slavery victim mentality system. On the short term, yeah, some of these people need a meal, they need some new clothes, but it's never come up to educate these people, to teach them that they don't need to live like that. They have all of the resources available to them that they could possibly want. It's never come up to show them how to access it themselves, how to use it responsibly. It's always, well, I'm just going to help them and I'm going to feed them and clothe them and give them a place to sleep. Okay, awesome. What else are you going to do? Well, exactly. You're not teaching them. You're not teaching them to fish. You're giving them a fish. You're perpetuating the system. And what Carl and I understood a long time ago is that the short-term Band-Aids aren't going to solve this issue. We have to take the bull by the horns and work on the long-term solution, which is education. Getting people to realize they have options and knowing where to go to access those options. Education. getting people to think for themselves. And this is the purpose of this show. This is the whole point of this show. This is why we want audience participation. We want people to come in, give their perspectives to round out our perspectives. Because, it's just from my point of view. And who's to say that I'm even remotely close to correct? And it's only you guys giving feedback and going, well, I've been through that, but I do it this way, that I'm going to learn anything. And I want to learn. I want to keep learning. I don't ever want to stop learning because I like it. I sunk my teeth into it a little while ago. And I like it. I don't ever want to stop expanding my perspective.
Yeah, it's energizing, when you get it, when you comprehend whatever it is that you actually are actively searching, trying to educate and enhance the knowledge base that you have. And the more you get it, the less unknown there is, the less fear there is, because the fear of the unknown is one of the biggest factors of the human psyche. And so the less things you know about, the more fearful you are. So that key knowledge and education, and intelligence, in my view, are one of the major factors of our ability as humans to expand or ascend, if you want to use that term. I just feel that damn, Danny, you just knocked my train of thought off.
I was just wondering why she's not in the list here. She's must be listening somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe she's on the live stream. Anyway, I have to get my train of thought back now. Our ascension, our ability to become better humans isn't just based on our knowledge, on our education. That's part of it. To be a better human being, to be a better person, also requires spiritualism, a greater understanding of the spiritual itself. It also requires love. And unfortunately, love is a very misunderstood and underrated word, because it has so many different levels. I mean, I love my sister, I love my mom, I love my friends, I love my wife. I love to different levels, and each one of them has different things associated with it, all positive. I don't want any negatives to come of that. But
well, I think to expand on this a little bit, this concept of love, the general community type love we're talking about is essentially allowing the other to be themselves, but seek the best outcome for them. I think that's the simplest way to describe it.
Give. Yeah. I mean, if we give and no expectations, we give, it doesn't matter whether we receive or not. This isn't an exchange thing. We love because we can love. And, I love my mother. I'm going to get love back from my mother-in-law. It doesn't matter if everybody is giving love, and we create a new society based on the higher concepts of who we can be as human beings. But it's everything. We have to come together with knowledge, with spirit, with love, with the intelligence, because none of the individual factors on their own will cut it. We've proved that. If we're highly intelligent, but there's no love, there's no spiritualism, then we screw up, we blow up the world.
Yeah, we make nuclear bombs.
Yeah, yeah. And if we have, we're just too spiritual, then it's one of those, turn the other cheek things. It doesn't work, because there's always somebody there that might want to be the bully, and then we lose all concepts. So it's a balance of all of these different aspects in our lives. And as human beings, as whatever it is that we are, souls, spirits in human form, we come into this world almost as nothing. There might well be a little bit of an inkling of a memory as a baby or as a child, but that's soon overpowered by the programming of our existence here. But if we gain the knowledge, we gain the intelligence, we gain the love, we gain the spiritualism, and we put them all together, then we become what we are becoming in the Unfuckers room as a soul group. And within this, I can see it from the comments, we're so in tune, if you like, in the way that we think and feel. And all we want to do is be together as a group so that we can feel it every day and know that we're surrounded by a community of people that exist on the same level that we do, and then spread that out to the rest of the world if that's what it takes.
Yeah, and for those that are struggling with this, they're looking at some of these places and they're all love and light. No, you got to just forgive, and and it's all of this stuff. There is a place for that, yes, but realize everyone has an inner asshole, and at everyone. Gandhi had it. Mother Teresa had it. Diana had it. Everybody has some aspect of themselves which is a jerk. And recognize it, embrace it. You don't have to express it, but realize it's there. Realize it's part of you. It's part of what makes you you, part of what makes you unique. It becomes an issue when it's the driving force in your life, when it is what is your expression all the time. And yes, sometimes I'm an asshole. Sometimes I tell people to just fuck off because I don't want to deal with them. And it's usually telemarketers or salesmen phoning me who don't realize that they're wasting my time. I try to be nice about it. Sometimes it doesn't come out, but I recognize that in myself. I recognize that, yes, I can be a jerk. Most cases I choose not to be. I choose to cut them some slack, look at it from a broader perspective, temper my reactions so that they aren't reactive but active. And a lot of people out there, they simply react. They something happens and they just and they fly off the handle, or they don't think about it. They don't put that slight little bit of thought, because your brain works a lot faster than you believe it does. And it only takes a millisecond to stop, ask yourself, is there more to this? It's all it takes. It's just a fraction of a second to be able to do that. And that changes how you react. It changes your reaction to a response. And once we all learned to respond rather than react, we're well on our way at that point. If you find yourself a reactionary person, ask yourself why. What is in me that will not allow me to step back and look at the situation from a larger perspective? Is it a lack of education? Is it a lack of information? Is it a lack of emotional control? There's something there. And we all need to look at this. I look at it every day. And when we start looking at this within ourselves, we learn just inherently without even thinking about it what that aspect of personal responsibility actually does for our lives. And it makes things a whole lot less trouble. You don't get in trouble as much. People like you more.
Yes.
They want to talk to you because they know they can tell you things that might be a little contentious, but you're not going to freak out over it. You're able to help more. You're able to put your perspective out more. It benefits everybody to be able to do this. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's not easy, but once you get it, it's instant. And it really comes down to a choice. Really, when you break this down, it's a choice. It's not a habit. It's not a training. It's not any of that stuff. It's a choice, and you can choose to not be reactive if that is what you wish to do. And I don't know how many.
It does change your demeanor, doesn't it?
Oh, big time.
When you exist, you're just completely different, and you can look at people and you can tell just by looking at them how they are going to react in a particular situation, how they're feeling at that particular moment in time. But if we exist in the way that I have just described and the way that you describe, our persona is completely different. You are approachable, you shine, people see you in a different way, and you behave in a different way. I mean, I go, maybe not so much in the past, but these days when I go out to some of my clients, I mean, I'm like a white giant sun, you know, inside wherever environment I am, and I'm beaming, and interact with them, and I'm laughing and I'm joking. It makes them feel good. I feel good. It makes them feel good, and it brings a completely different level of interaction between all of the people that might be in a room. Whereas previously, they might have been sniping at each other because, you know, somebody wasn't doing the job right. So existing in this way doesn't just change you, it changes those around you. It's just something that we have to do.
Yeah,
anyway, please,
and
is anybody ready to come in? Or do you have something else to add, John?
Well, I'm just thinking the original concept of the show was how to deal with the system. The system wants you to react. It doesn't want you to think about what's going on. It wants you to just knee-jerk, jump up and down, scream and yell, cause problems, just react. And when you stop reacting and you start responding, you really throw a wrench in the system. If anybody needs motivation, here it is. If you want to really toss a wrench in the system, if you want to cause the system problems, stop reacting, or stop reacting, start responding. Take your time, think about what's going on, respond responsibly. And they fall apart because their whole script, everything that they're trained to do, revolves around you reacting without thinking. And you know, on a really practical level, it's awesome. Believe me. The look on some people's faces is phenomenal, and it makes it all worth it. Believe me. Yeah. I mean, it's worth it anyway.
Well, the other part, yeah, it is. The other part that we mention about that, though, John, is simply that most of us don't have the knowledge to be able to respond properly, and some do it incorrectly.
Well, that's fine.
Also, part of the reason why we what we teach, or why we talk about what we talk about, so that people can become aware of this.
That's fine. Not having the words, not having the vocabulary or the background there's nothing wrong with that. It shouldn't stop you from doing this. And as an example, I'm sure some of you have heard us talk about the notice of understanding and intent, claim of right, fee schedules, how to write letters, how to put out the words so that you can stop actions. You can. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this. There was a fella early on in the World Freeman Society on Vancouver Island who lived out in the bush with his family. He was a subsistence hunter, and eventually Fish and Game came and took away all his guns, took away all his ammo, basically totally screwed his life. And he came to some of our members and asked them, is there anything I can do about this? So they questioned him a little bit and talked to him about his knowledge, his level of knowledge, how he can deal with this, and realized that he is nowhere near ready to take on the system. What they did realize was that it didn't have to be complex. His response to their action was a letter stating, I've looked through your laws. I don't see love, honesty, or truth in any of them. Therefore, they can't be my laws, and I will not participate. And it was that simple. He got his guns back. He got his ammo back. He's back living the way he was living because he actually stood up at his level. And his level was, I don't understand what you're talking about. I live my life under these principles, and they don't exist here, so that I can't live by your rules. You don't have to have the huge vocabulary. You don't have to have all this knowledge. You can do this very, very simply. And in some instances, it's just a matter of, I've never heard of that before. I don't know what you're talking about. You don't have to have all of that knowledge back there. If you're honest, if you respond in kindness and honesty and love, the system will respond back to you. And usually it'll just stop. Not always. It depends on, if you seek conflict, it'll bring conflict. Believe me. That's what they do. If you seek instant resolution on a honest and honorable basis, typically it falls apart. The system crashes because they don't know how to deal with that. They can't deal with people who are actually honest. For example, the swearing in, they don't use it in Canada very much, but in the States they still do, is do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? The proper answer is no. You don't know the whole truth. When they ask you for a birth date, you can't swear. You can't sign a piece of paper stating that you know unequivocally firsthand knowledge of the day of your birth. I mean, this is the kind of honesty that they cannot handle. And it needs to happen. We need to have people out there who recognize this stuff and bring it out. And the more people that do this, the faster we're going to get through all of this stuff.
You have my agreement on that one. The more people that do this, for sure. Like I say, everybody just decides to send their parking tickets in and plead not guilty, or their speeding tickets and plead not guilty. Everybody did that in a week. That's it. The end of the system.
Yeah,
the justice and court system for traffic court would fall apart because it can't handle that.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend sending it in pleading not guilty because you're contracting with the system and that's a pain in the ass. I would send them in saying no contract.
Yeah, well,
I'm not under contract with you guys. I don't owe you anything. Go away. I don't work for your corporation. But simple, right? We can do this with really, really simple tools. It doesn't have to be complicated. When Carl and I were doing it 10 years ago, yes, it was complicated. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. But it has to be honest. And that's the one thing that I learned is you need absolute honesty. And if there's anything, any slight bit of deception within that, even if you're not even aware of the deception that you're putting in there, they will pick up on it and they'll stuff it down your throat. Because that's what they do. They live on deception. Their whole system is based on deception. They're very good at it. If it's absolutely honest, first of all, you can't be questioned because it's honest. It's truth. This is my truth. And nobody can say that your truth is not truth because it's your truth.
Yeah.
Right?
John, sorry, I don't
go
want
ahead.
to interrupt there.
That's fine. I'm basically done.
Yeah, Mark from England has managed to join
there he
the
is.
chat. I wondered whether Mark had any extra news. Don't give too many details and what have you, but I wondered if he'd got any news based on that last little comment there. Maybe he does. Mark, do you want to come in and maybe just give us an update?
Can he unmute?
No.
Oh, there he is.
There we go.
Hi there, all right.
Hi, Mark.
Hey, how you doing, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant now.
Great.
Ever since a few weeks ago that I came onto the show and listened, and yourselves was listening to my little problem over here in the UK. Well, that little problem has kind of disappeared at the moment because I reacted exactly what they didn't want. With a lot of compassion, with a lot of love, and the right knowledge and simplicity as well. Now I've got these big corporations throwing the handbags in the corner, so to speak, i.e. teddy bears, and they won't even talk to us. And they don't want to litigate with us no more because we're a problem. And that problem is that we know a bit of knowledge.
So basically, they're talking. They're not pushing ahead with any of their plans. They're leaving you alone, or are you still trying to push forward with the conditional acceptance offer and get them to buy you out, in essence?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. And the thing is, it was only just last week that I think it was John what said this. I need to come back to this. Oh, what was it? Oh, God. It was all to do with getting them to the court system to prove that what their corporate name is, and you're attached to that corporate name, association with it. Well, we asked the courts for this proof. Now the courts won't even talk to us.
Nope. Nope, they won't do it.
And how long has this been going on previous to listening to our shows and some of the help?
The thing is, since before, it's been going on for 3 years. Now, I'm one of these people that if I know something's right, if I'm 99.9% sure that I'm right with it, I'll fight the corner. Now, with all these corporates come along, I mean, there's several corporates here, and all they're doing is, like today's show, it's about, the fear factor, bullying tactics and so forth, and thinking that you're going to drop into their laps and roll over and go and fetch a stick and so forth. But if you stand back, since I came onto the show and I've been pointed in the right direction and taking on these big hints and actually implementing them, it's knocked them back and they can't deal with it. And what this show's about, I've just come in and said, listen to, if you react in the right positive attitude and the simplest way around this, these corporates they can't deal with you. And there's no good shouting down the phone and being whatever abusive or anything like that, which I did at the start because I wasn't having it with what they were doing to my family. But now, the judge which is involved in this, fraudulently, should I say, he doesn't want to talk to us. The litigants, the solicitors don't want to talk to us anymore. I want to point on one thing what you said, John, as well. Where it has to be a real human being of flesh and blood. Well, they sent us a letter, and this was absolutely absolute blinder because I threw it right back at them. And I did notice on this application to the courts that it said Mills and Reeves LLP, and it was signed in wet ink, Mills and Reeves LLP. So I threw it back and said, look, you know, can you tell me if Mr. Mills and Reeves LLP is a real human being of flesh and blood? Well, that stopped them right in their tracks, because I also pointed out that the application that you put towards a court isn't worth the paper it's written on. This is absolutely fantastic. And I strongly recommend what I've learned within the past 3-4 weeks here. It needs to be passed around, because people need to wake up to, you know, the fraudulent acts of the system. I could go on forever, but, you know, there's a lot of more people that want to say something, but absolutely brilliant.
Mark, thank you for coming on and telling us that. I was looking forward to hearing responses that you back from them once you kind of went the way that John and I won't say directed, but we certainly gave you some choices that you could pick and choose from yourself, and you picked the blinders, and it looks like it's been brilliantly successful. I mean, I hope it continues that way. I'm not going to put a negative on the whole thing, but after 3 years of this and how much strain and pressure and stress that it's put on you and Lisa, and to hear that news right now, I honestly, I'm so happy for you. I think it's brilliant, and I hope it just goes from strength to strength for you now.
Yeah, Mark. Oh, goodness. I strongly recommend that you don't let this sit. If you believe you have a win, run with it, and make sure that you get either their agreement on in writing and signed that it's over, or you get an estoppel. If you can bring your paperwork to, I mean, if you can find a notary that's not a lawyer, good luck. That's the best option, because a notary is actually more powerful than any judge out there. But bring this to them. Say, look, they're not talking to me anymore. They refuse to deal with this. I want to make sure this doesn't come back. And get it finalized so that they can't in a year come back and do this all over again.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, absolutely.
So, anybody else want to come in, or do you have any?
Wow, it's surprisingly noisy at his house. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Yeah. If you're done, I'm going to mute you, or you can mute yourself. But we got a lot of noise coming in on your line, and thank you. Not that we don't want to hear from you. It's just that it I don't know, with the headphones, it sounds really bad here. Anybody else? We got lots of people in the room. I'm sure there's somebody's got some questions. I mean, tell us we're wrong. Come on.
Yeah, we've got 20 minutes on the typical show time. So
yeah, and I mean half the time this goes on for another hour afterwards anyway, and there's all kinds of questions then. So bring them out now. Let's do it now. Expand. Let's put your what's the word I want to use so it doesn't sound bad. Put your inhibitions on the line and help other people who may have a similar perspective to yours. And your question, there could be 1,000 people out there that listen to this that is going to be benefited from your questions. I mean, don't hold back. Please don't hold back. If we don't know the answer, we'll tell you exactly that. We don't know. But we want the feedback. We want you guys to participate. We want you to come in and tell us your stories. I mean, even if it's how you dealt with your children. You know, 3 weeks ago, I would have freaked out and thrown something at him because he's an idiot. But last week I did it this way and it was a whole different thing. Tell us about it, please, because we want to hear. We want everybody to hear about it.
And I think as well, the changes that are happening so rapidly too, you know, the way people interact, even like you just say there, with their children, you know, people are dealing with situations in a completely different fashion than they might have done several months ago. Things are changing.
Oh, yes.
If you want to go on to the energetics of things, we really are feeling the energetics. We really are coming together, you know, where we're finding a connection and a love with people that we never expected to before, and it's changing how we behave, how we feel.
Yeah.
That very process itself is changing how, you know, our community is moving forward.
Yeah. Hi, Mia. Thanks for coming on.
To say communities as well.
Hi, Mia. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, guys. No worries. How's the audio? Just checking before I say anything.
Beautiful.
Great.
It's okay. Cool. Nobody's getting deafened. Yeah, it was just a comment, but I mean, I'll get your perspective on it as well, because there are various ways situation that we've all faced or are facing. Maxim of law. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Now, I always have a problem with that, because to me there's a big difference between law and legislation. Law just is, but legislation is written by guys in suits in huge buildings. That's my perspective. I understand that. But when we also consider that we're breaking the law or the legislation almost every day, purely because, and I have no idea about Canada or the US or even the UK, and certainly not here in Portugal, but we know, sure and certain fact, that there are so many hundreds of thousands of pieces of legislation that we're just not even aware of.
Most definitely.
So where do you go? You're stuffed, basically, aren't you? You're damned if you don't.
Well, not necessarily. One thing that works really good in Canada is when they come, oh, you're breaking the law. Well, what law? And they spout off some statute. And the response is, well, that's a statute. Are you not aware that failure to distinguish between statute and law is gross negligence? They turn white and run away. Because statutes are not laws. They're internal rules of a corporation for corporate governance. Unless you work for the corporation, unless you're an agent or an employee of the corporation, they don't apply to you. A statute is not law. If it was a law, it'd be called a law, not a statute. The acts, like you hear it all the time. You look through, and it's acts and statutes, right? They don't call it law; they call it acts and statutes. They put it under the law banner because it is rules and regulations in that very broad sense. But a law is immutable. I mean, there's no. Carl, what's the word I'm looking for? It's when the cops just go, well, I'm just going to give you a warning.
Discretion.
Say that again? Discretion. That's it, right? A law has no discretionary aspect to it. You can have a lawful excuse for breaking a law. There is that. I mean, like if somebody's come at you with an axe and he winds up dead, then chances are you have lawful excuse for the reason why he's dead. But laws are immutable. Laws are laws. You can't change them. They're simple. They're basic. Everybody knows it. A statute is not a law. A statute is a statute. It's an internal rule of a corporation, or rule of a corporation for internal governance. And big difference there. So when you're looking at this stuff, Mia, make sure you're looking at it from the right book, as it were. I mean, a law book, there's only really 3 laws that I'm not talking about law of gravity or any of that sort of stuff, but, as far as rules of a society, there are only 3 laws. Do no harm, do no damage, and cause no loss, or do no harm, loss, or damage, and use no fraud in contracts. If you follow those rules, you can't do anything wrong, and you're not going to cause any problems. You're going to have a peaceful life, and everybody's going to love you to pieces. It's simple. Now, in Canada, I think the last count was something like 60 million statutes. Yeah, I know, maybe 20. I don't care because they don't apply to me. I am not an employee of the government. I'm not an agent of the government. In fact, I fired the government 10 years ago, and I let them know. I told them right to their face, you do not govern me. You do not represent me. And when the so-called representatives, the MLAs or whatever in the area go, hi, I'm your MLA, I tell them, no, you're not. You're not qualified, because they're not. You are not obligated to be governed. They have to have your consent to do so.
Yeah,
and there are many ways,
totally
as we've discussed, how they...
Sorry, Carl, go on.
Yeah, there's a delay. You carry on.
No, all I was going to say in follow-up to what JC was saying, which I completely comprehend, the difficulty arises is that when we are using any of their corporate identity, then we're franchises. So in that case, the codes and the statutes do apply to us as a legal fiction.
Nope.
It's okay. That's your perspective.
Well, no. The thing is, you're viewing it from their perspective. Okay, in that you can be, you living flesh, you can be a corporation. It's not possible. You can agree to be surety to a corporation, but you're not that corporation. Your straw man is not you. Okay, this is, a lot of people make this mistake. They think that by using that ID, by using that identity, they are assuming that identity, and they're not. They're still living flesh.
We refer to it as the overcoat, don't we? Just you take the coat off, and then you put the coat back on again.
Yep. It's a tool.
When you need it, it's there. It's a tool, yeah. So, you see, the problem that we've described in the past is that the people who are employed as agents or employees of and their sub-corporations are not told that there is a difference. They are told that everything that applies to them applies to everybody else, which means us on the street. It's only when we can turn around and ask the questions of them as to why do you believe that you have the authority to tell me or direct me to do this, that, and the other. Where does that authority come from? Can you fully describe all of it? When you start asking the questions of, they quickly learn that the blanket answer is, well, no, it's not. It's legislation. Well, yeah, legislation is for the rules of a society. It's not anything to do with me. I exist as a human being, as a man, living on this very spot right now. Tell me why that legislation applies to me. Any of these questions that you can ask them, you are removing their power, because almost all of them are unable to respond and reply on the spot, because they just fall for the stock answers. And if you stand in your power and not fearful, you're not aggressive, but you're not fearful, then you can win the day. So yeah, there has to be a certain amount of education on this, and you have to have a certain amount of knowledge. Of course you do. But even the conditional acceptance and asking questions can be enough to stop them dead in the tracks.
Yep. The legal definition of a statute is a legislated rule of a society given the force of law by consent of the governed. And there are a couple of things in there. A legislated rule of a society, not society in general. They're not talking about the common usage of the word society, meaning just people that live around you. They're talking about a named society. okay, like the SPCA or the Law Society. They're talking about some very specific entity, okay? The second thing in there that's incredibly important is the very last bit of that. By consent of the governed. They have to have your consent. There's a couple of ways they can do it. Most cases right now, they do it by tacit consent because we don't say no. The other option that they have available to them is by contract. If you have agreed to the contract and the statutes are within that contract, then you've agreed to the statutes as well. This is the case with a driver's license. If you go and submit an application for registration for a driver's license, you beg them to be in control of giving you permission to have that right to do what you need to do, you're under contract with them. And by contract, you have agreed to live by certain rules that they apply to you.
Well, how many in the group there, John, that are listening right now, how many are registered voters? How many of them have their name on voters register in the UK, as they refer to it? They have the voter registration in Canada as well. I think it's actually a tick box in the filing of your taxes. You get asked as part of that, and you tick. That simple tick box and the agreement that you sign or allow yourself to be becoming a registered voter ties you in essence to the voting system and the state's representation of you. If you stopped adding yourself, then that removes that presumption. Anything else that relates to that, the what do they call them now? The surveys they do every 4 years or so. All of that stuff is all a hidden type of contract, an agreement. Anything that they send to you, as John pointed out, it's tacit agreement because you didn't reply to them and say no.
Yep.
This is a prime example as well is somebody, some corporation you might have as well, sends you a revised terms of conditions. What do we all do? We get the letter, the terms and conditions. This is our new terms and conditions. Does anybody ever read them? And secondly, does anybody turn around and send it back to them with a big fucking notice on the front of it saying, I do not consent, leave the conditions as I signed, and send it back in the mail to them? Does anybody ever do that?
Well, I mean, when most people here probably have gone through the mortgage process at some point in their life. When you're in the lawyer's office signing papers and they hand you that 4-inch thick stack of papers, who says, okay, well, thank you very much. I'll be back in a week and I'm taking these home to read them. I'll guarantee you the lawyer won't let them out of the room because he doesn't want you to read them. He doesn't want you to do that. And although he legally or lawfully cannot stop you from reading what he expects you to sign, he's going to make it really difficult for you to be able to do that. This is part of the responsibility, knowing what you're getting into. Knowing, when somebody comes and makes you an offer, if you just blindly accept it, you have no idea what's going on. If somebody hands you a piece of paper and signs it, it could say you're going to give away your firstborn, and unless you read it, you don't know. Be responsible for the contracts that you enter into. Everyone has the ability to enter or refuse a contract at will. It's totally up to you. You don't have to enter into a contract. If you're going to do so, regardless of whether it's agreeing to take your mom to the store or buying a house or paying taxes. Paying taxes is a contract. And when you fill in Canada, it's called a TD1. When you fill out the TD1, that's the contract. You're agreeing to pay the taxes. If you read the Income Tax Act, you'll find out taxes are voluntary. You don't have to pay income tax. And I see Danny's in.
Yes.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not.
Welcome.
Hey.
Say something, Danny. None of the rest of the people, apart from me, really want to come in and are certainly participating, but nobody wants to talk.
Yeah, tell us we're totally off base in a full Danny style.
What the fuck you guys are going on about? Actually, no, it's not true. You guys are really on. Back and forth multiple times during the discussion, so I'm missing large chunks of it. The big point, what you guys were just saying, is so important because no one reads the fine print.
Yep.
The conditions when you sign up for your internet, or you sign up for the new credit card, or you sign up for your phone, you sign up for, I don't know, Facebook. Right? No one reads them.
Yep. And nobody puts their own conditions in. I mean, every.
Russia?
Yes. That was a couple of weeks ago. And just to reiterate for those who haven't heard about it, a fellow in Russia was handed a application form for a credit card. It was in such a format that he was able to scan it, change some of the wording in the application, print it back out, made it for his benefit, signed it, dated it, sent it back. They rubber stamped it. He got his credit card. He racked up a whack of bills. He took him to court. And he went, well, the contract says that they're responsible for it. They go, what are you talking about? So they brought out the contract. There it is. And they accepted it. So they are responsible for it. I mean, you can put your own terms and conditions in the contract. If it's something you don't absolutely have to have, but it would be nice, put your own terms and conditions in. So half the time, they're not even going to read it. Unless it's like really obvious that it's something been changed. Yeah, I mean, they do it to you all the time. So you can do it back to them. Whether you want to, whether that's right, I'm not going to say one way or another. I'm not going to make a moral judgment on that. But it's available to you. So, don't discount when someone brings you a contract, when you get a summons, when you get a perfect example, summonses, right? Okay, you are summoned to court. Awesome. I'd like to come in contract with your court. Here are my terms. And they're reasonable, they're honest, they're honorable terms. And if they don't accept it, you don't have to go to court. There is no court because they refused the contract. You didn't refuse it, so your hands are clean. Think about this stuff. Think deeply about this stuff. Look at the fine details in it as best you can. And you will find some way in all of this stuff, regardless of what you're looking at, whether you're dealing with schools, whether you're dealing with a municipality, whether you're dealing with a federal court, doesn't matter. You will find a way to turn it to your advantage because it is there. It's always been there. And all we just had was the lack of responsibility and the lack of ability to go and search for it and look for it and find it. But that's gone now. We have that ability now. So utilize it.
Yeah, and it's making such a big difference in the lot of people that are carrying this out. We don't
Carl,
expect to necessarily. Sorry.
Tara just said she just did that with the school forms. Tara, would you like to come and tell us about this? I'm really curious about what you did. So unmute, come on in, let us know. We'll run over a little bit because this is interesting.
Yeah.
If you can unmute, I can probably do it from here.
Yeah, he's probably getting the headset.
Maybe. Apparently I can't.
Oh, no, she's not unmuting. Okay. I'm not sure whether we can, even though we're admins.
No, I'm looking at the list right now, and I can't do it. Oh, that's sad. Because that would give a lot of people some ammunition and some confidence, too, to know that, anybody can do that. All right. Well, Tara, if you want to write it down, how do I unmute? Bottom of the screen on the right-hand side, right next to your name, there should be a microphone with a line through it. Just click on that.
Yeah, I think she's on a smartphone device as well.
Okay. It could be
Not
somewhere
sure
else.
where it is on that.
Could be somewhere else.
Yeah, I think some of those controls are on the top of the screen for the smartphones, and I don't remember where it is.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, I think.
Oh, she said she'll get on the PC. So, if we want to just be patient, it probably won't take more than 5 or 10 minutes for her to tell her story. But I am interested in hearing what she did and what came out of it. Because if Mom can do it, anybody can do it.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, it makes a big difference. The more you do this, the more empowering it is, and you just live your life in a completely different way.
Yes.
You know, you stop being fearful. You walk the streets with your chest out and your head held high. Yeah, it's just an amazing feeling if you can just do it.
And it doesn't take much. You don't have to go whole hog and take on the system completely.
No, start small.
Yeah, start small. Start with a parking ticket. You know, question the mayor, because he's the one that allows the parking tickets to happen, and go like you know, who do you think you are? Because we, the people, own the city. You don't own the city, and the people don't care about whether I park in this spot or not. Question it. You know, I mean, don't go in and if you can, don't go in with like totally blind and just not knowing the questions you want to ask, like, because these people are really good at this stuff. So do a little research, dig a little bit, make sure that any questions you ask, you already know the answer to, because otherwise they can tell you whatever they want and you're not going to know whether it's crap or not.
Yeah, and that's something we've said right through all the shows. You know,
that's right.
Don't make statements that you can't back up. Don't ask questions you don't already know the answers to, because it's just not going to help you.
That's right. But asking the hard questions, ooh, they work really good. And oh, there we go. Hi,
Hey,
Tara.
Hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I hear you great. So go on, tell us the story then, Tara, how the school sent you
Having
some
audio
forms.
issues, I'll try again.
No, I can still, well, we can hear you good, so.
Oh, she's...
Yeah, she might still be logged in on the smartphone and the PC, so it might be freaking out.
Yeah, it's not the many devices.
Yeah.
Well, you're coming in awesome. Yeah, you sound great.
Great, I'm so glad.
And it gets really quiet.
Yeah. We're all waiting for in bated breath here, you know.
Oh. Yeah, of course. So you guys can hear me okay. Every school year we have to re-enroll our children into the public school system for several reasons. One is because of the home that we live in. Although I have graduated, children have always been enrolled. So each year they make us jump through all these hoops, sign all these affidavits, provide copies of the mortgage. It's ridiculous. So this year, after participating in a lot of discussions with the UU room, as well as your shows, which I'm really grateful for, I decided to add in my own, I guess, clause, if you will, into this year's affidavit, saying that I think that pretty much that this information that I'm giving you each year is unnecessary, and that I don't consent to having to do it each year. So I'm petitioning the board in their own affidavit, and I'm curious to see if they'll sign it. Won't have any problems.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's awesome. It's simple. It's easy. It's not really going to get you into a lot of trouble. It could be a lot of fun. I don't know if it's going to have a tremendous effect, because they're just going to go, well, it's your opinion. I don't really care. So you didn't, the one thing I saw with that, or that I picked up on right away, is you didn't throw the ball back in their court in any significant way.
Yeah.
Right. And this is what we're trying to get through to people is when you do this, look for ways where you can make it so that if they refuse, it's over. It's done with. You don't have to deal with it at all. If they don't respond, it's over. It's done with. You don't have to deal with it at all. And don't give them. Don't be ambiguous with your statements, because that's essentially your opinion, and they don't give a shit about your opinion. So I kind of think what you're going to get out of this is probably a letter back going, thanks for your opinion, but it doesn't matter. We still need this information. What you could do in that respect. I mean, this is retro can't even remember the words anymore. I'm just so bloody tired. Looking back on it, what you could have done is say, well, this is privileged information. This is very important information. It's personal, private information. I want a detailed explanation of why you require these things. Force them to either refuse it and say, no, you don't need it, or have them expose the system, the crap in their system as it stands now. And those are the kind of questions that are the most powerful. When you put somebody on the spot and they either expose it, or their only choice is to expose it or let go. Those are the most powerful questions you can ask. And simply giving an opinion, it's just that. It's an opinion. Nobody cares. Especially in the system.
What I did was I specifically cited that the fact is in the state of New Jersey, most of the United States, children are entitled to a free education. So I basically, like you said, I basically threw the ball back. It's just, it starts with where you are. You have to start with where you are, and starting in my own education community generally has really just, it started to open my eyes to saying, look, I don't have to necessarily does so. And it's just started the whole questioning process. So
yeah, I mean,
to prove what it is that I shouldn't have to prove anything, I live here.
Yeah, I mean, so, the question that comes up for me is, what the hell, whose business is it in the school board to know what your mortgage is about?
Exactly. Right. It's sensitive information too. So
that's right. It's privileged information. And you can bill for it too. This is privileged information, and I bill for this information, so it's $250,000.
Brilliant. Yep. Thank you, guys. So.
Yep.
Thank you, Tara.
Yeah. For anybody that wants to step in on this, yeah. Thank you, Tara. Have an awesome day. Anybody who wants to step in on this, before you leap into asking these questions, take your time. You've got a time to respond to these, and take that time. Write down your questions, read them over and over and over again. Think about what they're asking for, and what they, where they're putting in obligation, where they're putting in consideration, and ask why. If it's something that doesn't make sense, if you want to get a cell phone and they want to know your father's name and your mother's birthday and how many dogs you have, question it. What the hell does that have to do with having a cell phone? Right? Explain to me why. And chances are you're not going to get a cell phone because they're just going to tell you to go away. We're not going to deal with you. But if they bring it to you, like the school board, you are entitled, your children are entitled to an education. It's signed into the Declaration of Human Rights, and the U.S. is a signatory of the Declaration of Human Rights. Therefore, they're bound by it. So if they bring it to you, you have more power then. They can't just say, no, you're not doing this. They have to have a specific reason for it. Otherwise, you can cause them all kinds of grief. So, pick your battles. And if it's something you're seeking, chances are you're just going to have to accept the contract. If it's something they're seeking from you, you have more power, more authority to add your own clauses to that. And, keep that in mind. And I think that's 10 minutes over. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Carl, unless you got something else to say to wrap this up.
No, I think I spouted wonderfully today, so I don't think I need to do it anymore. Yeah. Yeah.
So in a nutshell, in closing, realize that what you don't know is vastly outweighs what you do know. Realize everything you don't know is available for you to find out. All you got to do is go get it. It's all there. And in most cases, you don't need to know that much. So don't let it scare you. If you have an issue, question it. It's very simple. Be responsible. Don't react. Step back and respond. Even if the response is, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what your language you're speaking. Because law is not English. It's a completely different language. So respond in your level, wherever you're at. And it doesn't matter where you're at. Because even the least educated, the least informed people still have a tremendous amount of power. They just have to realize they have that power, know where it comes from, and recognize how to use it. It's not a difficult thing to do. So on that note, everybody, y'all have a great week, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Yeah, thanks, guys. And again, John, appreciate you producing and co-hosting. Everybody have a good week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye, everybody.